Good afternoon and welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier, and thank you for stopping by. Africa's output grew by 3.4% in 2018, says Afreximbank in their Africa Trade Report 2019. Africa's total merchandise trade in 2018 had a value of over $997.9 billion. WTO estimates show that the volume of global merchandise trade grew by 3% in 2018, down from 4.6% in 2017. The report noted that while the European Union remained Africa's main continental trading partner in 2018, accounting for 29.8% of total trade, African trade with the South grew significantly over the last decade to account for more than 35% of the continent's total trade in 2018. Report highlights that Africa has the potential to do more, noting that its contribution to global trade remains marginal at 2.6%, up from 2.4% in 2017, and that while intra-African trade rose to 16% in 2018, from 5% in 1980, it remains low compared to intra-regional trade in Europe and Asia. The chief economist and author of the report, Dr. Hippolyte Fofax, said intra-African trade, which grew by 17% in 2018, more than 3 times the rate of growth of extra-African trade, was the major driver of Africa's total merchandise trade in 2018. Dmitry Medvedev, the Prime Minister of the Russian Federation, met with the Afreximbank Board of Directors at their annual general meeting, which they held in Moscow. Listen to the inside story I did with Martin Dennis, Stephen Yaboa, and Olusegun Okubanjo about the African Free Trade Agreement. The Financial Times is saying the US risks handing Africa's e-commerce sector to China. Tibor Nagy, who's the Assistant Secretary of State for Africa, says the US has an intense interest in Africa, and the perception that the continent is of little interest to President Trump's administration is incorrect. The US is South Africa's third largest trading partner, with two-way trade in 2018 of $13.7 billion. The land debate is being monitored closely, he said. As everybody knows, Trump has asked Secretary Pompeo to monitor the situation, to look at it carefully, which is what we're doing, because that could be a loaded issue that US investors would take a very close look at when making a decision on whether or not to invest in South Africa. He then added, don't expect debt relief. Africa is facing another potential debt crisis today, with around 40% of low-income countries in the region now in debt distress or at high risk of it, according to an IMF report released a year ago. From 2000 to 2016, China loaned around $125 billion to the continent, according to data from the China-Africa Research Institute at Washington's Johns Hopkins University. All of these countries are sovereign states, so it's for them to decide who they want to trade with, Nagy said. We feel we have an obligation to point out to them when we believe they're getting into severe economic difficulties. Mark Boland thinks this was a message potentially directed more towards holders of African Eurobonds and other debt than African governments. Don't expect debt relief, the United States warns Africa. Zimbabwe declared the interim RTGS dollar its sole legal currency. The RTGS dollar was changing hands at about 13 per dollar on the streets of Harare on Monday, while the interbank rate is 6.32. The central bank also announced a series of other measures, including raising the rate on its overnight window to 50% from 15%. Any attempt by the officials to bring a new currency would require confidence. This is why I keep using that Nouvel example. People aren't sure that there's something backing the currency. There's no way that something like this will be maintained. People will not trust the currency. It will promote more off-market activity. even more if that's possible. Monday's move has all the hallmarks of a hastily concocted measure to stop the downward spiral of the RTGS dollar against other currencies. That's the point. As I said, money is accordingly a system of mutual trust, and not just any system of mutual trust. Money is the most universal and most efficient system of mutual trust ever devised. Cowrie shells and dollars have value only in our common imagination. Their worth is not inherent in the chemical structure of the shells and the paper, or their color, or their shape. In other words, money isn't a material reality. It is a psychological construct. It works by converting matter into mind. South African all shares up 11.41% this year. Dollar Rand 14.33, big recovery from above 15. Egyptian pound 16.7. EGX 30 plus 6.38% year to date. Love this tweet, Hustle O Chide from Nigeria. Nigerian all share down 5.16% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange down 4.5% this year. A ship belonging to Maersk Line leaves Mogadishu seaport on June 24, 2019. Maersk Line started operating at Mogadishu port in January this year. Tanzania to sell 1 million tons of corn to drought-hit Kenya. Kenya may import 1.3 million tons in the 12 months that start July, more than double the previous year's purchases. Prices of corn, which is used to make a staple food, increased as much as 70% in April from a month earlier as output dropped. So we utilize 4.7 million tons in a year, and will need to import at least 1 million tons. Acacia Mining fires off a 5,000-word rebuttal to Barrick Gold. Acacia believes that Barrick's interventions in Acacia's negotiations with the government of Tanzania, the length of time Barrick's negotiations with the government of Tanzania have taken, and the way they have managed their direct negotiations have had the effect of undermining Acacia in Tanzania. The company strongly disagrees with these views, and it's unclear on how Barrick can substantiate its proposed adjustments. Kenya, value of exports to African countries stood at 71.51 billion, a marginal 0.1% growth in the first 4 months of 2019 versus 2018. Kenya retirees may be missing out on better returns because of the overemphasis local pension fund managers place on domestic fixed income assets, according to Alan Gray. Retirement fund managers in East Africa's largest economy invested less than 2% of their assets offshore, well short of the 15% allowed by the industry regulator as at the end of 2018. They cut allocations to equities to 17%, the lowest in at least 2 years, while stepping up exposure to government securities to 39%, the highest since December 2016. We aren't sure why there is such limited offshore investment, but we believe some home country bias preference is a factor. This can be harmful to long-term pension fund member returns, given the likelihood of better risk-adjusted returns being available offshore. Stanbic has rolled out a 20 billion shilling women-only loans program. Kenya Airways lost approximately 701 shillings every month in 2017. In 2018, this figure narrowed to 632 million a month. Nairobi all shares up 5.17% year to date, trading on a PE of 11.59, and the NSE 20 is down 6.87% year to date. Thank you for stopping by.